Please continue. I am intensely interested. I wish that I could give you my reasons for the desire. I cannot do so, but I beg you to continue. I should add, continued Vaughan, ignoring my remarks, that we have established rules to measure the forces of gravitation and have estimated a decrease of attraction as we leave the surface of the planets. We have made comparative estimates of the weight of the Earth and planets and have reason to believe that the force expression of gravitation attains a maximum at about 1/6 the distance towards the center of the Earth, then decreases until at the very center of our planet matter has no weight. This, together with the rule I repeated a few moments ago, is about all we know, or think we know, of gravitation. Gravitation is the beginning and gravitation is the end. All earthly bodies kneel to gravitation. I cannot imagine a beyond, and yet gravitation, mused the rapt philosopher, may also be an expression of. He hesitated again, forgetting me completely, and leaned his shaggy head upon his hands. I realized that his mind was lost in conjecture, and that he was absorbed in the mysteries of the scientific immensity. Would he speak again? I could not think of disturbing his reverie, and minutes passed in silence. Then he slowly, softly, reverently murmured, "Gravitation, gravitation, thou art seemingly the one permanent, ever-present, earth-bound expression of omnipotence. Heat and light come and go, as vapors of water condense into rain and dissolve into vapor to return again to the atmosphere. Electricity and magnetism appear and disappear. Like summer storms, they move in diversified channels, or even turn and fly from contact with some bodies forbidden to appear. But thou, gravitation, art omnipresent and omnipotent. Thou createst motion, and yet maintainest the equilibrium of all things mundane and celestial. An attempt to imagine a body destitute of the potency would be to bankrupt and deaden the material universe. O gravitation, art thou a voice out of the beyond, and are their forces but echoes, tremulous reverberations that start into life, to vibrate for a spell, and die in the same caverns of the universe, while thou continuest supreme?" His bowed head and rounded shoulders stooped yet lower. He unconsciously brushed his shaggy locks with his hand, and seemed to confer with a familiar being whom others could not see. "A voice from without," he repeated, "from beyond our realm. Shall the subtle ears of future scientists catch yet lighter echoes? Will the brighter thoughts of more gifted men, under such furtherings as the future may bring, perchance commune with beings who people immensity, distance disappearing, for the ever-reaching spirit? For with thee, who holdest the universe together, space is not space, and there is no word expressing time. Art thou a voice that carriest the history of the past, from the past unto and into the present, and for which there is no future, all conditions of time being as one to thee, thy serving covering all and connecting all together? Art thou, gravitation, a voice? If so, there must be a something farther out in those fathomless caverns, beyond mind imaginings, from which thou comest, for how could nothingness have formulated itself into a voice? The suns and universe of suns about us may be only vacant points in the depths of an all-pervading entity in which even thyself does exist as a momentary echo, linked to substances, ponderance, destined to fade away in the interstellar expanse outside, where disturbances disappear and matter and gravitation together die, where all is pure, quiescence, peaceful and dark. Gravitation, gravitation, imperishable gravitation, thou seemingly art the ever-pervading, unalterable, but yet moving spirit of a cosmos of solemn mysteries. Art thou now, in unperceived forces expressions, speaking to dumb humanity of other universes, of suns and vortices of suns, bringing tidings from the solar planets, or even infinitely distant star mists, the silent unresolved nebulae, and spreading before earthbound mortal minds each instant fresh tidings from without that, in ignorance, we cannot read? May not beings, perhaps like ourselves, but higher in the scale of intelligence, those who people some of the planets about us, even now beckon and try to converse with us through thy subtle, ever-present self? And may not their efforts at communication fail because of our ignorance of a language they can read? Are not light and heat, electricity and magnetism plodding, vacillating agents compared with thy steady existence, and it is even further possible? His voice had gradually lowered, and now it became inaudible. He was oblivious to my presence, and had gone forth from his own self. He was lost in matter celestial, and abstractedly continued unintelligibly, to mutter to himself as, brushing his hair from his forehead, he picked up his well-worn felt hat and placed it awkwardly on his shaggy head, and then shuffled away without bidding me farewell. The bent form, prematurely shattered by privation, uncouth, unkept, typical of suffering and neglect, impressed me with the fact that in him man's life essence, the immortal mind, had forgotten the material part of man. The physical half man, even of his own being, in Daniel Vaughan's estimation, was an encumbrance unworthy of serious attention. His spirit communed with the pure in nature, and to him science was a study of the great beyond. I embraced the first opportunity that presented itself to read the works that Professor Vaughan suggested, and sought him more than once to question further. However, he would not commit himself in regard to the possible existence of other forces than those with which we were acquainted, and when I interrogated him as to possibilities in the study of obscure force expressions, he declined to express an opinion concerning the subject. Indeed, I fancied that he believed it probable, or at least not impossible, that a closer acquaintance with conditions of matter and energy might be the heirloom of future scientific students. At last I gave up the subject, convinced that all the information I was about to obtain from other persons whom I questioned, and those answers were prompt and positive, was evolved largely from ignorance and self-conceit, and such information was insufficient to satisfy my understanding or to command my attention. After hearing Vaughan, all other voices sounded empty. I therefore applied myself to my daily tasks and awaited the promised return of the interesting, though inscrutable being, whose subterranean sojourning was possibly fraught with so much potential value to science and to man.